let's get on with this. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be talking about The Last Jedi. I saw it on its opening night, and I haven't put up a video until now because I've really been trying to wrap my head around the film and what my overall thoughts are. In this video, I'm going to be giving my personal opinions and thoughts on the movie and what I would have done given the opportunity to write the film myself. Now, there are countless reviews and videos of people talking about this film on the internet, so I'm going to leave a couple links down in the description of reviews that I have watched that basically sum up all my feelings on the film. They do a very good job of organizing all their thoughts and opinions into these videos. They're a little bit long, but they're worth the watch. I will say though that I personally did not like The Last Jedi at all. Things I did enjoy, however, I loved how it was directed. I loved the set designs and all of the practical elements of the film I thought were glorious to look at. The visual effects, of course, are top-notch, and John Williams' music was phenomenal. The performances are quite good, given the material, but standout is definitely Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker. His performance was excellent, however, the character was so flawed I can't even begin to explain. But the videos that I will be linking below get into Luke's character as a whole. I'll give my thoughts real quick. I thought he was completely wrong in the film. He didn't feel like Luke Skywalker. Mark Hamill did a great job of acting, but it just did not feel like Luke. Even Mark has gone on record as to saying, this isn't his Luke Skywalker. He doesn't feel like Luke. I've been a Star Wars fan since I was a young boy. I saw the original movies before I even saw the prequels. So for me, growing up, Luke was my hero, and my name is Luke, so I even connected on a bigger level with that. My first favorite action figure I had was Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back. I have a beautiful painting of the duel from Empire behind me. Empire has always been my favorite Star Wars film, and the journey that Luke goes through in that film is incredible. He goes through so many struggles, and as a character, his arc is incredible. He starts from nothing. He's this lonely farm boy, and over the course of 3 films, he becomes the most powerful Jedi in existence, and also he grows as a man as well. He starts as this young whiny boy, but matures and becomes this powerful warrior. And it's just an incredible story. I even have a replica that I paid a pretty high price for of Luke's lightsaber. I built this whole thing myself. I bought the pieces and I installed it, and it's Luke's lightsaber. I even made, when you turn it on, you can install a custom sound to start up the saber. I even installed this.
The Force is with you, young Skywalker. But you are not a Jedi yet.
I just think that is the most powerful line in that whole film. Because Luke, he's not a Jedi yet. When he faces up against Vader, he goes through struggles and he ultimately gets his ass kicked. I really wanted this because he's my favorite fictional character of all time, and I think it's just a very important piece to have. It's so unnecessary. When Luke first grabs the lightsaber and he chucks it over his shoulder, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Oh, what is Luke gonna teach Rey? What's he gonna say to her? Nothing really. He's just gonna look at the lightsaber, the thing that brought him into being a Jedi and the whole universe as a whole. That was the thing Obi-Wan presented him with, which brought him into this life, and he fucking throws it away. Are you kidding me? Ridiculous.
Also, one quick thing that I did forget to mention in this video, which is probably one of the biggest what the fuck moments of the whole movie with Luke's character, is he would never, ever, ever even contemplate killing his own nephew in his sleep. Like, are you shitting me? I don't even want to really talk about it because it was just so stupid, but Luke, the person who stopped at nothing to turn Vader good, senses a little bit of dark side in his nephew and thinks about murdering him in his sleep. Fucking stupid. Luke would never do that. I'm sorry. That was bad. Anyway, back to the video.
And that's ultimately why I have such a problem with this film, because I was really excited to see Rey go through some struggles and to really kind of not be good at everything for once, because I will admit in The Force Awakens she was too good at everything. I liked The Force Awakens quite a bit. I thought the story flowed very well. It was a very tightly edited and tightly knit movie that was very enjoyable to watch. However, I did have a couple issues with it, and one of them was Rey's character. She was a little bit too mysterious, and she didn't really get a lot of growth through that film, and I was really excited to see her go through some struggles in this film and to kind of be like low, but she doesn't learn anything in the film. Some of my biggest issues, not going into super deep details, but um, the whole film as a whole was completely sloppy. The pacing was all over the place. I thought most of the side stories, other than Kylo Ren, Rey, Luke, that stuff, I thought it was completely pointless and boring. Finn and Rose, I thought their story was the weakest of the film. I thought it was completely unnecessary and ultimately adds nothing to the story at the end. Rose is a pointless character. The whole storyline with Poe and Laura Dern's character, who I don't even remember the name of because she was just pointless. Again, pointless is kind of the word I throw around for a lot of the aspects of The Last Jedi. I thought Snoke was a complete waste of a character. There was so much mystery and buildup as to who this guy was, how he rebuilt the First Order from the ashes of the Empire, and he's completely disregarded. It seems like everything that The Force Awakens set up was just completely disregarded by Rian Johnson when he wrote the film. And now, of course, I don't want Rian Johnson to kill himself. I don't want him to never direct a film ever again, like some comments I've been seeing all over the internet. Please stop with that. That is absolutely ridiculous. I'm extremely disappointed and hurt with what he did with the characters in the film, but I'm not gonna talk about the man that way. That is absolutely ridiculous. I'm just not happy with the film. At the end of the day, it's just a movie, but it's a culturally significant film franchise that people hold dear in their hearts, especially these original characters, and it seems like they are just being trampled over. I'm still completely not over the fact that Han and Luke will never get a scene together, and we will never see Han, Leia, and Luke on screen at the same time ever again, probably, because they've all just been so wasted in these films. Phasma, Phasma again, a completely wasted character. They said she was going to get more screen time in this film, but she literally just pops up at the end for a quick fight scene and she's gone. Completely stupid. It also opens with the First Order being presented as a bunch of buffoons. They're so hard to take seriously because of all the jokes that are added throughout the film regarding them. Hux especially. Hux is just screaming and acting like a maniac and like a cartoon character for the entire film. He just comes across as the most incompetent little weaselly guy. Like, why is he even in charge of anything in the First Order? He's a joke. Also, the movie opens completely inconsistently with how the Force Awakens left off. They blow up Starkiller Base, and the First Order is fucked. And then the movie opens with the First Order being on top of the Resistance, and the Resistance is fighting. Like, what? How the fuck did that happen? Seriously, what? Like, the Resistance, it starts with them having to leave their base because it's under attack by the First Order. The First Order should have to, get up off the ground first. They just got attacked. Their entire planet was blown to pieces. How are they already reconnected and ready to fight again? makes absolutely no sense, and it's not even explained. It's the stupidest shit ever. The whole movie is just so inconsistent, and it's like the biggest the biggest problems with the film are its plot holes regarding what the Force Awakens set up. The whole point of that first movie was that they're looking for this map to Luke Skywalker that he supposedly made in case they need his help. Rey goes to see him. They never bring up the fact that there was a map, and that's how she found him. And he's acting like he wants nothing to do with anything. He states that he came there to die, but Harrison Ford states in the last film he came there to find the first Jedi Temple. So what the fuck is going on with Luke? And he comes back at the end for the most cheap, like, redemption, like, oh my god, look, it's Luke, he's doing cool stuff. But he doesn't even leave the island. He does this cheap bullshit with the Force. And they keep doing all this stuff like they're inventing new ways the Force can work for the sake of the plot. And it's so cheap. The writing in the film seems so cheap, and there's no heart behind any of it. I'm getting too caught up in all this shit. I really disliked the movie. And I'm a true Star Wars fan. I'm not a fanboy, but I'm also a fan of film. And the movie as a whole, from a technical standpoint, was so sloppy. And I can't even believe that it was made that way. It seems like every prediction the fans made for an important moment in the film, who is Snoke gonna be? Who are Rey's parents? What's Luke gonna say to Rey? It seems like every opportunity for a cool moment, Rian Johnson said, "No, I'm gonna, this isn't gonna go the way you think. Who's Snoke? It doesn't matter. I'm gonna kill him off anyway. Who are Rey's parents? Oh, they're nobody. Don't worry about that. She's her own person. She's nothing." All the stupid humor that is just like shoved in your face when there's a serious moment. It's so bad. It feels nothing like Star Wars. The Casino Planet, the stupid political commentary and the social commentary with the animal rights stuff and all the politics with these are the rich people, you're taking from the rich, and then like these people are making money from war profiteering, and it's like, can you fucking stop with this? This isn't what Star Wars is. Yes, Star Wars implements some aspects of real life and real culture, but it's not as put on display as this movie is. It's so shoved in your face. And the ending, the whole Rose character I hated, and the whole ending when she's like, you're not going to win by protecting what you, or fighting what you hate, you're going to win by protecting what you love. And she kisses Finn like the most awkward kiss ever while the fucking gun is blowing up the thing in the background. I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Your sister who died in the beginning was fighting for what she loved and fighting against what she hates. You're making no sense. That's the dumbest line in the whole film. Again, watch those videos that I linked down below. They explain it way better than I do. I'm kind of just jumping all around, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my interpretation of how I think The Last Jedi should go. This is going off of what The Force Awakens had set up, and I'm still implementing some elements of The Last Jedi into this, but this is mostly an original story by me. So hopefully you guys enjoy it. Please let me know down in the comments if you like this iteration, or if you would like to add something else to it, or if you hate it. Honestly, let me know. I'm open to constructive criticism. Don't be a dickhead, because if you are, I'm not going to reply to you. Anyway, though, let's just get right into it. I have it all written down, so I'm going to be looking down at my phone for this, because I did write the whole thing out, but I'll look up and I'll address you guys while I'm reading this. But I wrote this down tonight. It took me like 2 or 3 hours to figure this all out. I tried to structure it as best I could. Now, I'm not a screenwriter by any means, so it might be a little bit sloppy and there might be some things I left out. But as a whole, I incorporated most of the characters into it. I gave them all a decent amount of story to do. So let's just get into it, alright? The movie opens. There would be an opening crawl. I don't really know what I would put into it though, because they're opening right where the last one left off, so there's not much to explain. It'd probably just be do something like, after the destruction of the Starkiller base, the First Order is trying to regain its footing to plan another attack on the Resistance. Rey is with Luke. The Resistance is back on their base, and yada yada. Let's get into the fucking movie. So after the title fades away and the crawl is gone, the camera pans down to the remains of Starkiller base. Snoke's ship flies down to an unknown planet. You see the location. It's very rocky with lots of cliffs and rubble. Kylo Ren, General Hux and Captain Phasma are meeting with Snoke in his throne room. It's a big reveal of the character for the first time in the flesh. The Knights of Ren are with him. He's a big presence and he's very intimidating. Snoke explains that they need to rebuild what they have started. They need to find the Resistance. They can't just let them win this easily. Kylo Ren reveals that he can find Leia using the Force, and he can find the rest of the Resistance this way. Captain Phasma suggests she lead the raid on the planet so she can find FN-2187 and wipe him out for good, since he is a valuable asset to the Resistance with all the knowledge that he has of the First Order. It transitions to the Resistance as they're enjoying their victory, and Poe is a huge hero. We see that Finn is waking up and his back has a mechanical brace on it because it got so messed up by Kylo Ren. He's pretty weak and looks very confused. The last thing he remembers is fighting Kylo Ren, obviously. He asks the doctor where Rey is. It's the first thing he says in the movie. I really liked that line in The Last Jedi, even though his return was played off for comedic purposes. I liked that he was like, "Where's Rey?" Like, it was a very touching line. Leia and Poe connect more and their relationship is more fleshed out. It shows them communicating and talking to one another. You then find out the First Order is attacking the planet. They come down because Kylo Ren tracked Leia through the Force, and it jumps right into the action. The First Order is attacking the planet, the base that the Resistance is on. We see Phasma come out and start killing numerous people with ease, showing her true power and skill. I really want this story to develop Phasma more for later on. She's looking for Finn. Poe is trying to take out stormtroopers and ground troops that are invading the base, and he tries to find Finn as well. He finds him in the hospital, or whatever you'd call it that he's in, and he tries to get him out of there since they're buddies. Kylo Ren's ship lands onto the planet. He emerges and enters the base. He kills a couple Resistance fighters with his lightsaber. Poe and Finn escape the base and they run by Kylo Ren's ship. Poe, recognizing the vessel from the intro to The Force Awakens, thinks quickly and tosses a tracker onto it before him and Finn board their own ship and escape. Kylo Ren eventually finds Leia, and he has a touching conversation with her about killing Han Solo, and it develops their relationship more because that's his mother and it's his son, and it's a very, the whole relationship with Kylo Ren and his parents is completely fucked up in the movies, but I want to really push it in this story. He has this conversation with Leia. Leia is like shocked to see him, but she's like, "Please, you have to come back with me." You can tell Kylo Ren is contemplating killing her in order to fulfill his destiny, but he leaves her after this conversation, and Leia and the remaining Resistance fighters escape as their base is destroyed. There's a brief space battle with some TIE fighters and Resistance fighters, but the Resistance eventually escapes in light speed. They can't be tracked through light speed. Fuck that plot point in The Last Jedi. That shit was stupid, and it just sets up further plot holes and inconveniences for future movies. That shit is stupid. You can't track people through light speed. Doesn't make any sense. Poe and Finn are talking in their ship, and Poe explains that Rey wants to find Luke. Or that Rey went to find Luke, because Finn kept asking about her. Finn is worried. Poe gets a message over the radio, or whatever it is, from the rest of the Resistance that they're going to meet on the nearest planet, which is Tatooine. Great, more sand, Finn says. Adds a little bit of humor to the film, but not too much. We cut to Luke and Rey on the island again, right where we left them. She hands him the lightsaber, and immediately he says, "Where did you get this? Who are you?" She explains that the lightsaber called her to it. She says that she has the Force, and she needs help. She's with the Resistance, and she used his map to find him. She mentions Kylo killing Han Solo, and Luke already knows because he would have sensed it. She gets all of this out in the open instead of drawing it out like they did in The Last Jedi, which is a really stupid scene where he's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, "I'm with the Resistance. I'm Rey." And he's like, What does that mean?" She's like, I don't. She should have just said, "I have the Force. I need your help." Anyway, Luke knows he has to help and explains how he is skeptical about training her, though, because of what happened to Ben Solo. But he remembers to himself how Yoda taught him after all that had happened, and he agrees to train her, and also makes it seem as though he knows who she is. She takes him onto the Falcon after he asks how she got there, and him and Chewbacca have a sweet but sad moment reflecting on Han Solo, and he also has a cute moment with R2-D2 after so long of not seeing him. We cut back to the First Order back on their rock planet. Captain Phasma reports to Hux and Kylo Ren that after she inspected all of the ships returning to their new base, she found a tracker on Kylo Ren's ship. Hux assures her to leave it there and to let the Resistance come. We have to wipe the rest of them out. Kylo Ren goes to meet with Supreme Leader Snoke, and they have a brief confrontation about Rey, where Snoke does similarly to what he did in The Last Jedi. He kind of talks shit to Kylo Ren, like, how did you get beat by a girl? He might, like, electrocute him or whatever. And he says, we need to find the girl. And Kylo Ren says, I can find her. I can track her through the Force. She doesn't know how to block herself out yet. She's too vulnerable. And Snoke says, you have to find her. You have to bring her back to us. She'd be useful. Because he doesn't want to kill her. He wants to use her. She's powerful. He tracks Rey to the planet that Luke is on, but he doesn't know Luke is there because Luke is able to mask himself in the Force because he's more powerful. Rey doesn't know that she can do that yet. If you're going to invent new ways of using the Force, at least make it make sense. I feel like that would be a completely useful thing that you can do. If someone's really powerful with the Force, and you can obviously find people with the Force, you could block yourself out from unwanted attention. He sends Kylo Ren to retrieve Rey and bring him back to her. We cut back to Luke, and he's giving Rey her first lesson. He's showing her the island first and the Jedi temple that he came to find. We see a brief glimpse of his X-Wing submerged in the water. Before the lesson starts, he explains first who Snoke is, where he came from, and how he rebuilt the Empire. He explains how he persuaded and turned Ben Solo to the dark side and how powerful Snoke really is. It gives Rey a sense of dread and fear for this being that she's being told about. She mentions to Luke the legend of Darth Vader and how Luke was the only one that believed he could redeem him and succeeded when nobody else thought he could, and how maybe Ben could also be turned back. Luke thinks Ben is too far gone after killing Han Solo, but history has a way of repeating itself. He begins to train Rey in a more uplifting montage. It's a bunch of different scenes of Rey doing different Jedi trainings. It's kind of like Empire Strikes Back, but a little bit more advanced. Luke realizes how powerful Rey really is, and she sometimes begins slipping into the dark side of the Force a little bit, and it starts to scare Luke, and he stops the lesson for the day and gets a little bit upset with her. He's upset that she's not fighting it after he repeatedly tells her to try. She feels bad, and he leaves her for the night. We cut back to the Resistance, and Finn is still worried for Rey. As Poe and the Resistance are planning an attack, he breaks away and says to Finn that he wants to lift his spirits a little bit so they can get a chance to talk. Let's go have a drink somewhere. I know a great place. BB-8 and them go to Mos Eisley Cantina. It'd be a great bit of fan service, but it wouldn't detract from the story. It'd just be a cool setting for a chance for fans to be like, oh my god, that place. Poe and Finn have a nice bit of one-on-one conversation and they bond with each other. It pushes their friendship more. Poe gives a lot of backstory about his life and his passion to fight for what is right. It explains where he came from, what kind of person he is. And Finn explains that all he has is Rey, his new friend, and Poe, and fighting for good. He talks about some of the horrible stuff he had to witness in the First Order, especially what Phasma has done. Again, pushing the Finn and Phasma dynamic. I like their kind of conflict they have with one another. He talks about every evil thing that he witnessed Phasma do, all the horrible training and torturing that they had to do, especially when they had to murder all the civilians of that town in The Force Awakens. That was his breaking point, and he knew that he had to leave that life behind him. He says he just hopes Rey is alright. We cut back to Luke at night. Luke sits alone, depressed by a fire, and scared about what could happen if Rey does take advantage of the dark side. And then Yoda's ghost appears and basically gives Luke a little pep talk. They don't include anything about the Jedi texts or anything like that, just basic knowledge of the Jedi, because the texts were so vague in the film they didn't really matter. Luke says he doesn't want Rey to end up just like Ben. He doesn't want to he's scared if he can do this again. I can't lose her like I lost Ben. Yoda tells Luke something sweet, like, you're Luke Skywalker, you're the guy that saved everybody for the Empire. You're even more powerful than I am now. Look at everything that happened to me, and look how much I've taught you, or something like that. Something sweet. And it's like, get back up. You gotta, she's powerful. She can be like A New Hope. They wouldn't exactly say that, but like kind of like that. Like she could be the make or break for the galaxy. It cuts to Rey having a conversation with Chewie at night because she knows how to communicate with him. Get Chewie involved in the story a little bit more. They have a cute conversation with one another, and then they go to sleep. Luke wakes up in the middle of the night to the sound of a ship landing. Rey comes out of her room first, lightsaber in hand, as Kylo Ren comes off his ship. Chewie then comes out and fires at him and charges at him out of anger for what he did to Han Solo. But Kylo Ren force pushes him against a wall and knocks him out brutally. Rey and Kylo exchange words, and Kylo says she's coming with him, whether she likes it or not. We see Luke in his room, watching them through the window. He goes into an old chest and pulls out his dusty green lightsaber. He emerges, and Kylo Ren is shocked to see him because he couldn't sense him there. "You," he says. They have some dialogue with one another about how Luke thinks he can just start the Jedi over again with Rey, and how he's wrong. How Rey is going to be coming with him, and how the Supreme Leader will turn her just as Kylo had turned. Kylo Ren pulls out his lightsaber, but Luke remains calm. He keeps his on his belt. He tells Ben that the dark side has clouded his mind. He killed his own father, and he basically calls Kylo Ren he's like, "You're damaged goods. Let me help you. You need help." Kylo is furious and knocks Rey out with a rock to her head with the Force. Luke is enraged by this and draws his lightsaber. They have a very brief duel, but Luke is clearly rusty, having not done anything Jedi related for a little while now, regardless of how powerful he is. He puts up a great fight, but Kylo Ren brings the roof of a building down on him, which I liked in The Last Jedi. I thought it was cool. He brings the roof of a building down on him. He takes Rey and flies away. We cut back to Tatooine with the Resistance finalizing their plan to fly to the First Order planet and fight. Leia talks with Poe about the tracker that Poe placed on Kylo Ren's shuttle, and they talk about Han and how great of a leader he was, and how Leia sees a lot of that leadership in Poe. And she also explains a little bit more about Kylo Ren to Poe so he can get some knowledge on their dynamic. We cut back to Rey waking up on the First Order planet in Snoke's throne room. Snoke has her lightsaber next to him on his chair and begins to speak with her similarly to The Last Jedi, but a little bit less like cartoony. He came across as a very cartoony villain in that film with a lot of his like expositional dialogue and his like corny lines. But he's basically like talking to her, trying to intimidate her, but also trying to manipulate her. You get a sense of how he got inside Kylo Ren's mind and warped his perspective on things. He talks about how Luke is washed up and how he failed to rebuild the Jedi, that they're a dying breed. The Resistance, back on Tatooine, they take off, and you see them reach the First Order's planet. They begin an assault with ground troops and ships as well. Hux is ordering the First Order around as he usually does. Hux is kind of just doing his thing in the film. There'd be more stuff with them, like there'd be more dynamic, like conflict between him and Kylo Ren, but this is more like the crucial plot points of the film. There'd be more filler stuff added in, but nothing extreme like Rose or Laura Dern's character. There'd be little new characters added in, but this is like the main storyline. They begin an assault with ground troops and ships as well. Poe is doing his thing in his X-Wing, taking out TIE fighters as usual. Finn is still resting aboard the main shuttle with Leia, but he wants to join in the fight. We cut back to Snoke, and he's like, "Your stupid rebel friends have arrived. We'll make short work of them," as Rey watches. Kind of like how Luke watched in the Return of the Jedi, but not as like on the nose. We cut back to Luke. He's emerging from the rubble. Chewbacca helps him up, now awake. Luke is pissed. He's visibly upset. He tries very hard and contacts Leia with the Force and finds out where she is on the First Order planet and lets her know that he's coming. Chewbacca boards the Millennium Falcon, and Luke suits up in some cooler Jedi robes, darker colored, similar to him in Return of the Jedi. He gets his lightsaber, hooks it onto his belt, and walks out to the water. He closes his eyes and raises his hand. You see the water start to bubble as the X-Wing blasts out from under the water, even quicker than when Yoda did it. We cut back to Snoke, Rey, and Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren basically plays good cop with Rey. He's speaking to her now, trying to suck up to her, expressing how powerful she is and how great they would be standing side by side ruling together. She spits in his face, calling him a monster for killing his own father, and says she would never stand beside him. we see the First Order is actually taking the advantage in the fight. This is over a course of time, by the way. These scenes wouldn't be as short as I'm explaining them, but these would be over the course of the runtime of the movie. We see multiple TIE fighters getting blown away. Then in an epic shot, an X-Wing and the Millennium Falcon swoop in, and Luke and Chewie start wrecking everybody. Luke has R2 and his X-Wing, and they're talking to one another like old times. Chewie, with nobody in the gunner position, leads some of the TIE fighters away so the Resistance can help him out by taking them down. Luke is taking out TIE fighter after TIE fighter, but eventually lands his X-Wing near Leia's ship that he locates, and they finally interact with one another as he emerges. They talk about Han and how Luke needs to rescue Rey and Ben from Snoke. She says that Ben is too far gone into the dark side and that he'd have to cross the entire battlefield to reach them, because Leia's ship is over here and Snoke's ship is like on the other side of this place. They're in the same area. It's kind of like the same distance where the base was in The Last Jedi and the walkers were in the movie, but instead it's like Leia's ship and some of the Resistance, and then it's Snoke's main ship, which is like the main base, because it's just some random planet they landed on. She says that Ben is too far gone into the dark side and that Luke would have to cross the entire battlefield to reach them. She says not to go. He says, Leia, that's your son. That's Han's son. We can't give up on him. I have to save him. And I have to save my daughter. Big reveal that Rey is Luke's daughter. And he's known it since he saw her on his island. It all came to fruition. Like when you see her, Mark Hamill would give a performance like, I know who this is. He even does it at the end of The Force Awakens. He gives her this look like, oh my goodness. But he hasn't told her yet. Finn says that he'll help. He's shocked to find that Rey is Luke's daughter, but he needs to save Rey as well. Luke questions if Finn is able to make the journey, but Finn gets up determined that he's going to make it. He says he's sat around for too long and he has to make a difference. We cut back to Snoke, and he steps up to Rey now and says that she has nothing in life. She's nothing but a useless scavenger from Jakku. If she doesn't turn to the dark side, she'll amount to nothing, and she'll die alone because she is nothing. He keeps pushing this aspect of her being nothing, and she's alone, and she's visibly like upset and she's crying because she doesn't know where her family is or where she comes from. If she doesn't turn to the dark side, she'll amount to nothing because she is nothing. He says perhaps he can convince her, and then he begins to torture her, kind of like how he did in The Last Jedi when he lifted her up and was like doing whatever he was doing to her. But he would be getting into her mind and warping her mind. Luke and Finn open the door of the ship and walk out. Luke immediately draws his saber and begins messing up stormtroopers left and right as him and Finn make their way to Snoke's ship. Now this battlefield is very rocky terrain. There's big rocky structures that they can hide behind and take cover behind. And it's a cool kind of like dynamic of following Luke and Finn through this maze of rock, and they're just taking out stormtroopers and shit. Luke is force pushing, stopping blaster bolts in midair and sending them back to the shooters, and throwing his lightsaber around like a complete badass. If a TIE fighter is flying too close overhead, Luke is throwing them aside with the force and smashing them into cliffs and rocks. You really get to see the amount of power that he's developed in the last 40 years. He's doing all this with ease, and Finn, in a humorous fashion, is amazed by it. He could be like, oh man, like he's a little bit like impressed that he's witnessing this. Finn is also doing pretty well with his blaster against stormtroopers because of his training. Suddenly he sees Phasma in the distance and grabs an electro baton from a fallen stormtrooper. He tells Luke to keep going and that he has unfinished business. Luke keeps charging forward and Finn starts to head towards Phasma. Poe is wrecking TIE fighters left and right, but 3 get on his tail. He does some fancy flying and he takes them out with ease. It gives us a chance to see Poe and his skill set really at work. Chewie, however, gets locked on by 5 of them at once, and since nobody is on his guns, the Resistance can't hold all of them off, and Chewie unfortunately gets shot down and dies. Yes, Chewbacca dies in this version because ultimately in The Last Jedi he does kind of the same thing. His only point is to fly the Falcon at the end, and he doesn't really do anything else, so I figured might as well let him go out, sacrificing himself in a blaze of glory, flying Han's ship. Luke and Finn both see this from the ground, and they are both visibly upset, but they keep on going as this is war, and that's what happens. Leia also sees it, and you see her reaction, and she's really sad. Like, Carrie Fisher could do some really good acting in that scene. Finn screams out, and Phasma hears it. She spots him and starts to make her way toward him. Luke eventually makes it to the entrance of Snoke's ship and easily kills the guards outside the doors. He's making his way through, tracking Rey with the Force to see where she is, killing stormtroopers and officers along the way. He busts into Snoke's throne room to find Rey being tortured. He pulls out his lightsaber immediately and tells Supreme Leader Snoke to release her. Snoke does this and she falls to the floor. Snoke laughs and grabs Luke's old lightsaber, which is sitting next to him, and ignites it. Snoke doesn't have a lightsaber of his own, as it's a Jedi weapon, and because Kylo Ren was once a Jedi, he allows Kylo Ren to use a lightsaber, but Snoke believes he's more powerful than a lightsaber, but he wants to use the lightsaber to kind of mock Luke because it was his old lightsaber. Rey is in a daze and tries to make her way back to Luke, but Kylo Ren advances on her, igniting his lightsaber as well. Rey uses the Force to grab a staff from one of the Knights of Ren, and she begins to fight off Kylo Ren and the rest of them. She's holding her own, but you can tell she won't last the entire fight. Luke and Snoke begin to have an epic duel as well. It cuts to Finn and Phasma having an epic duel of their own that intercuts with Luke's duel. Rey takes out two of the guards while still defending herself from Kylo Ren and the rest. Luke and Snoke continue fighting each other, now exchanging dialogue with one another. Snoke tells Luke that after Kylo Ren finishes Rey, Snoke will kill Luke, the last Jedi. Luke says no. When I'm gone, I will not be the last Jedi, but I'm not going anywhere. He unleashes some epic Jedi powers in some epic choreography, and eventually he kills Snoke. Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren notice this and immediately advance on Luke and Rey at the same time. They have an epic showdown of Luke and Rey teaming up, fighting off the Knights of Ren and Kylo. They eventually kill all of them, leaving Kylo Ren alone. Kylo Ren gets the upper hand on Rey and knocks her down. Luke disarms him and cuts his hand off. You could tell that he has pity for him, which is why he doesn't finish him off. His final words with Kylo Ren are, "I'm sorry, Ben," and he takes Rey and leaves Kylo Ren there in shock. Finn and Phasma continue fighting, and he eventually knocks her helmet off. Gwendolyn Christie gets a chance to show her acting chops and talks a bunch of shit to Finn, but he ends up ultimately wrecking her, and he ends up killing her. She dies, but she did a lot in the film, and you kind of get more of a grasp on what kind of character she was and why she had to go. Finn sees Luke and Rey making their way back to Leia's ship, both with lightsabers in hand, killing stormtroopers as they're making their way to board Leia's ship. The Resistance is now leaving the planet. Finn and Rey have a really touching moment after finally reconciling with one another, but they're both still very upset over Chewie, and she's still visibly shaken from her encounter with Snoke and Kylo Ren. Luke gets back into his X-Wing, and they start to fly away. But then he senses something. Where's Leia? Leia isn't on her ship as it's taking off. It cuts to her approaching Snoke's ship. A couple of stormtroopers approach her, and she force pushes them all out of the way. She walks onto the ship through the interior of the dark corridors to find Kylo Ren alone on the floor of Snoke's throne room, with the Knights of Ren and Snoke dead around him. He looks absolutely defeated and in sort of a trance. It's almost like a horror movie with very dim lighting and a lot of suspenseful build-up music. She tells him to come home and that this will all be alright. She goes to help him up, and at that moment, he stabs her and kills her just like Han. She falls to the ground. Luke and Rey both scream out in shock as both their ships fly away from the battle. The final shot of Kylo Ren in the film is him standing over Leia's body. The ships fly back to Tatooine. Luke is meditating, and Rey and Finn are talking. They're at their new base. Luke has a sweet moment being back on Tatooine. The remainder of the Resistance is settling back in. Rey meets Poe, and there's a funeral for Leia. The final scene of the film is quite touching. It's Rey sitting out, looking at the Tatooine desert, and Luke comes out to join her. He says Leia is one with the Force, and she'll always be there. He then says, "I've always wanted to tell you. The night Ben attacked the temple, I made sure you made it out safe. I brought you to Jakku because I knew you'd be safe there. I had to erase all memory of myself from you and everything that I had shown you. I didn't want you in danger, but I should have known the Force would find you again. Rey, I'm your father." She cries, and they both look at the twin sons of Tatooine, and it fades to the credits. So that's how my kind of choppy narrative of the film would have gone. So in my version, a lot of people do die. Snoke does still die. The Knights of Ren die. Leia dies. Chewie dies. Phasma dies. But they get character development. And I mean, this is a war story. It's sort of a dark movie. There should be a lot of death in it. They wanted to establish this dark tone for The Last Jedi, so do it. There's a lot of dark imagery in the film. I want it to be very bleak and dark. If I could do visual representations, I would, but you kind of just have to use your own imagination. Again, I didn't really narrate that as best I could, but hopefully you get a sense of what I was going for. Luke makes it through to the third movie because he's Luke. He's revealed to be Rey's father, so they can now have this real dynamic where he's training her in the Jedi arts. He's the final member of like the final like big three main characters, and he gets to make it to the third film. Like, I don't know, it leaves people wanting to see more and where the story's gonna end. The Last Jedi ends, and you're just like, I don't really care what happens next. All the characters end up in the same position they started in, and Luke dies, Snoke dies, Phasma dies, and all these people die with no consequence. Like, it doesn't matter because you didn't know anything about them. They weren't significant really. So I made them significant, but I still wanted to kill them off because I don't want Snoke to be around because he's too much of too much like the Emperor. So I kind of wanted him to get out of there, but still, give exposition and tell who he was and why he's so powerful and get a chance to show his power. And the lightsaber duel at the end would be epic, versing him and Luke. Him and Luke fighting each other, and then Rey and Kylo Ren and the Knights of Ren fighting, and then eventually it'd be the Knights of Ren and Kylo Ren fighting Luke and Rey. I think it'd be very cool. Disagree with me if you'd like. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts, but that's my version of The Last Jedi. So thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more videos. This was pretty exhausting to do. Might have been a little bit all over the place, but I'll try and edit it as best I can. Anyway, stay tuned for more videos. This is Fucus 101 signing out, and may the Force be with you.